Is there any better feeling than finally filling up a sketchbook? I don't think so. This is about a year's worth of plein air work, so let's check it out. Okay, here's the sketchbook that we're going to go through. It's a Strathmore tone tan. It's the heavier weight, and it's about 5.5 by 8 inches. And they're really handy. I really like this size. It's more like kind of cinematic, and it gives you a good, a lot of real estate to work with. All these are in gouache, and it's my primary plein air medium. And I think where I was at with this sketchbook, you can see this is at the end of 2023, so over a year ago, kind of in the fall then. And it's had been doing a lot of plein air, like more finished pieces outside, but still gouache and still small. But I kind of needed to get back to just studying outside, and so putting all of the kind of finish aside, and I wanted to start really focusing on, just studying and being less attached to the outcome. And so sketchbooks are really good for that. So you can't like sell the, well, I mean, I guess you could, but I wouldn't. Keeping it in a sketchbook lowers the pressure a little bit. You're not going to try and sell it, and so it's really just about the work at that point. So this is in Colorado here. This is El Dorado Canyon. So I was just sitting on a rock trying to study the light changes. So this is actually later than this, but there was a passing cloud, so just the cooler temperatures and trying to get the different vibe with the same scene. With gouache, it's super fast, right? That's why I like it. If you're doing this in oil, it's like it takes forever to dry, even if you're using liquid or something like that. And so you can quickly adjust and layer if you need to. If you're studying especially, it's like, oh, that value's not right. Lighter, warmer, cooler. You can move pretty quickly through that. These are just little rock studies. I'm just like lavender tint here. The lichen colors, just noting that here. This is kind of later evening, just at the bank, and just these color relationships of like this lichen and the warm rocks. El Dorado Canyon's got a lot of red, so just trying to pick up on that stuff. Which comes in handy when you're trying to scale up certain things. You learn sort of color patterns. These are from California. So I went there for a workshop with Kosta Duvresky, an oil painter, and this is just outside the Airbnb. California's got a really, like the humidity is different, obviously, than here in Colorado, which is a desert. And so without the mountains also blocking the sunset, you get a much more exaggerated golden hour. So whenever I go to the coast, I always try to paint at that time of day, because we don't get a lot of that, super extreme afternoon a lot of times, because it's blocked by the mountains a lot. And then the greens are different, just because there's so much moisture. So again, like, I'm not really worried about like the cropping or whatever, and not really even worried about composition so much. It peeks through and it happens, but it's not really the focus here. It's more about colors and capturing the light and just the overall feel. More from that workshop, just on the walk home. I think it was like a 15 or 20-minute walk from the workshop, so I would stop and paint, just sit on the sidewalk and paint, like these old Victorian houses, something like that, but all the planes catch different lighting, or catch the light differently, so there's like warms and cools, so it's really good practice. Just that, again, the golden hour stuff, catching the tops of palm trees, and you'll learn when the warm light is faded because it's far away, or where it's sharp because there's a a building casting a shadow that sharpens it against a tree, and just stuff like that. So yeah, just studying. These are in Colorado, and I was starting to transition to start to explore these monolithic rock ideas, like this one. This is actually a bouldering rock, so these are all chalk outlines or chalk marks from climbers, which I thought was kind of neat. I've always had rock climbing as a one-day subject to dive into and blend anatomy with landscape and rock especially. So this was kind of the start of that idea, oh, maybe that could work. Yeah, just some late afternoon stuff. Lighting. These are at Rocky Mountain National Park, which is one of my favorite places. A couple miles in, where you get closer to the alpine lakes there, and these massive rocks with tons of moss and lichen and all this stuff. So it's tons of color variation. Plus you get your warm and cools when they're in shadow. And yeah, just trying to get a feel for the palette. And then these are just composition sketches. So one thing with sketchbooking that I try to recommend to people is just have a clear goal. And they don't it doesn't always have to be the same, but are you trying to make a mini painting, which is more like this is? Are you just trying to get a handle on the colors in the scene and get those right? That's this kind of stuff. Are you trying to do more composition? You can just draw, right? You can just use a pencil and draw that stuff. Just reduce the amount of variables that you need, and it can be a little less daunting that way and faster. And you get what you need. You're not trying to do all those things and capture it in a painting, and then have that be, every ingredient is perfect. So, yeah. I don't always label things cleanly. Usually I'm in a hurry, but if you are trying to reference the time of day, sometimes that matters for the season, especially here. In the mountains, it'll start to get dark at 3:30. This is from a workshop. So this was a demo that I did outside of a studio in just near my house in Colorado. The point was kind of making a scene out of nothing. So this is an alley with a recycling bin and stuff like that. So the transitioning of all the cool greens and all that kind of stuff. So really just trying to find a focal point, which is kind of this trash can and this, what are those cables that hold telephone poles? Whatever, it doesn't really matter. But over here are just rough kind of block-ins of big shapes, big masses. So all the big masses here, little mass, that kind of thing. So that was a demo that I did. Last year I did a workshop in Astoria, Oregon. It's really awesome. It's a really cool place. If you're watching this and you went, thanks again for coming. It was a great time. But these are from the scout trip that I did before I taught. So the year before that, I went and kind of scouted locations just to get a feel for it. So I was prepared. I tend to prepare. But, if you've been there before, you probably recognize some of these spots. But these are all looking from this same spot. Just this is the rock, this is looking north, and this is looking south, I think. Yeah. And then this is a different beach later. But these are much more color, a little bit of composition. But again, the humidity, vapor in the air will tint things very differently. So just trying to get a feel for that. So I didn't show up completely unprepared. The ocean can be somewhat intimidating, especially for me because I don't live near one. So I kind of have to get back into it when I go there. A couple more. This is this same scene. And I mean, these are tiny. This is an inch by 2 inches, 2.5. It does not take a ton of ideas or a ton of space to get the idea for a painting down. This actually, I repainted this. This is I did a like a 10 by 8 or something like that of this, and this was enough of an idea plus my photo reference to kind of capture it. So yeah, like, 20 minutes, something like that, especially with like fleeting lighting conditions like this. It's always a benefit to go as fast as you can go. You'll capture it, it'll be fresh and nice and clean, and if you're just using it for reference, it's really, really good. There's also something about like locking in the memory of being there when you're on location doing these kinds of things. No matter what this looks like, it somehow bakes in the experience more for me. Maybe for everyone, but for me, it definitely does. And then I've got photo reference of different angles, but then I know like, oh, the sky's too dark, the darks are too dark, it cuts out all the red light usually, stuff like that. This is from a hill. I had like 36 hours in Astoria, so I was cranking. I was like driving to a spot, hanging out for an hour and a half and then going somewhere else. This is a shipwreck. We didn't make it here at the workshop, but it's really cool. It's the wreck of the Idledale? I can't remember. But yeah, it's really gnarly. It's super cool. It's a weird thing to paint. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to paint, but like no one knows what the hell they're looking at, so it's, I don't know. I'm not sure I would like do that as a painting, but it was cool to like sit there and paint it, and the tide goes out like dozens of feet out, so it's like this glassy beach, and it's all like windswept and stuff. It's really cool. But yeah. When are these? In the fall. Yeah, so these are in October. So kind of back to studying here. Falls, there's a pretty short window here in Colorado, a week or two, really, and then there's kind of a trailing off of it, but simplifying the tree shapes, that's kind of the gist of this page. Can you mass in the lights and then the darks and find something interesting there? And you can tell this one's like super reworked. You can see the impasto. See how it starts to build up. Yeah, so you're just kind of playing with colors, exaggerating here and there, simplifying here and there, seeing what works. This fall thing about like the sky contrasting with the warm leaves always works. But there's some nuance of like, I don't know what kind of trees they are. Cottonwoods or something, I don't know. They're usually pretty ugly, but if you mask them, they take on this like purpley gray that can be a really great backdrop to stuff, and then it makes colors pop like in here. Yeah, so you can see some impasto like right over the top for that little lighting. This is my neighbor's house. Her house, she's got these like insane trees, and they dump all at once every year, and she's got a brick house, no pun intended, and there's certain times of day where there's tall houses across the street, but her house, like, it's like a Stonehenge thing, and the light will blast through right at like a 30-minute window, only in October. But I really love, like, she takes care of her lawn, so she gets this nice like green orange kind of combination. It's super cool. Plus you get the covered porch. All this warm light is bouncing up into the porch, and it's bouncing all around, so like the whole scene is warm except for like the roof and a little bit of sky in here, so you can kind of contrast that a little bit. But this is more about being like super excited about like a time of year and a feeling, and trying to kind of capture it. Like, this probably wouldn't be a painting, but like this idea of like dappled light crossing through grass and leaves, like that could be in a painting. This whole like purpley yellow orange thing, I've definitely used a lot of. So it's not quite, the composition's not quite there. I get carried away with chasing shapes and leaves and all that kind of stuff, but that's, because this is a study, you don't have to worry about it, right? So that's good. Super cool. Okay, these are... Okay, so I didn't do a lot of plein air for a while. This is like the following year, spring. This is in February, and it was cold. I don't know if you can tell here, but all these like dappled, sort of pot marky. This is when the paint is freezing. It'll sort of bead up and then freeze and then melt, and then you usually have that look to it. So you can usually tell when water-based painters paint outside when it's cold, because you'll get those like freezing dapples. But there's this bleary, it's cold, but there is moisture in the air, so you get this like glary light. This is right in the foothills. If you've been to Red Rocks Park, this is near Red Rocks, but it's not like looking at the stadium or the arena thing. There's lots of cool stuff around there, which I'm teaching a workshop here in Colorado in the fall. So if you like this kind of stuff, check out my website. But like here, there's mostly neutrals, like grays, like looking into the sun, which I think is really neat. Neutrally stuff is actually much harder to capture plein air than kind of your bright, vibrant, like beam of light with bright grass and all that stuff. So it's good practice. And if you're setting up, like I hate breaking things down and like packing things up, and it's like, ugh. So like the more you can do standing in one spot and like look this way and look this way and look this way and look this way, to me it's like the most efficient use of your time if you can't get out that much, which I can't that often. But I love like snow and rocks. This is like the ultimate contrast puzzle to explore. So how do you manage all this noise of light and dark, like a billion light and dark shapes, and then going in and out of light too, so then you have pairs of light and darks to work with. It's just getting a handle for it, and also you'll really start to understand how reflected light works, like canopy light. When you start painting snow outside, you'll start to see like why it's blue when the sky is blue, because it's a mirror, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so pretty fun. I taught a workshop in San Diego, so I went like a day early, and I was just hanging out there. So these are some sketches, kind of, again, warming up with the ocean. I just have to relearn it every time I go. So nothing crazy here, although this idea like did turn into a painting. Oh, it sold. Where I had this like really sharp shadow cutting across this tall cliff, and I exaggerated it and made some people in the surf. It didn't look anything like this or this, but it was from the reference here, and then this kind of idea. Like I took that and then made it into a painting. So it's always useful, and it's just fun. It's just I like to get out and see new stuff. Same workshop. I think that was outside. That was the demo outside of the school. So kind of the like two buildings coming to a corner, all these hedgerows. So again, like picking a focal point, kind of arranging it around that, obviously the umbrella, and then trying to add in some planes and atmosphere, even though it's only, I don't know, 50 feet maybe, something like that. You can still add and fake the atmosphere going back towards that. I had a chance to go to London. Well, I had to go there for work, but I stayed there for a little bit so I could do some plein air there. So this is kind of the first one there. First one's always kind of gross whenever you show up to someplace new that's sort of unfamiliar. And like painting London is hard. It is really hard. Like you want to talk about subtle, like everything is gray except for the trees, which are also kind of gray. So it's like, okay, you're like in desaturated mode, and there's not a lot of or there's not a lot of sky, like bounce light or canopy light most of the time, or a lot of the time. I don't want to stereotype. When I was there, it's cloudy a lot. So you kind of have everything's flat lighting, grays, and so it's really hard to get that to work. And so, this is kind of like a first attempt. This was outside Westminster Abbey, maybe, like looking across the street. And the cops were bugging me about sitting there. What's all this in? This is the museum, or the National Gallery. So a little bit of sky. Actually, then okay, I was lying. Later that day, it was sunny, but still tons of gray. But I don't know if you can see, but I'm really trying to give some life to those grays, which is something I'm really leaning into with like some of this mountainy stuff I'm working on lately. But it's about like warming up, cooling down, or painting like a really saturated layer underneath the grays, and then graying it down, and then letting some of that sun, come through, so it has sort of life and vibrancy, which it does in real life, because it's not like uniform. It's got like grime on it, but it's not uniform, and different lights bouncing off of it. So yeah, you're just trying to make it feel more alive. But when you do have little pops of color, like, it kind of brings everything together. This was at Regent's Park, and the clouds were actually pretty insane that day. It was really cool. So a little bit of composition play, but honestly, like, most of the time I'm just filling up the sketchbook panel. Like, how much time do I have? Do I have time for this, or do I have time for this or this? So I had time. But you definitely get that English countryside feel. These are, now we're back in Astoria. So this is at the workshop. But we usually wrap at like 4 or something, 4 or 4:30. People are usually pretty tired. But I mean, it's always this like the difficult thing with workshops, both teaching them and taking them. It's like I would much rather have like a workshop schedule where it's like everyone show up at 6:30 in the morning, and then you work until like 10:30, and then you have like a 4-hour break, and then you start again at like 4:30, and then you go to like 8:30, because that's where the best light is. But it doesn't really work like that, unfortunately. Yeah, it's just people are not like used to that kind of thing, and don't want to really get up. I get it, because it's like it's sort of a relaxing kind of trip anyway. But anyway, these are after class. So all the container ships, which I've never painted before, but super cool. In the bay, the distance is so far that they could be passing in and out of shadows from clouds, and so some of them are lit and some of them are not. And it just has this really cool effect that I'd never seen before. So super cool, really, really cool. And then like across is mountains from the bay. The other side of Oregon, or is that Washington? I don't know. The other side also has mountains, which has a nice backdrop for stuff like this. And then harbors and all that junk is always fun. Again, lots of atmosphere, and then, with a straight shot view of the Pacific, more or less, you get the true sunsets, as deep as they can get. Couple more. These are, this one over here is a demo. Let me just move this over. This is a demo from class. It's like after lunch or something, just simplifying surf, thinking about it like bricks, like sort of crude wave anatomy. But the surf rolling over, and then picking your battles, like trying not to like capture every wave, but you only need a few, and you kind of get the gist. And then you can carry on. Another after class, they were actually racing, which is cool. Like I raced sailboats when I was a kid, so I always like it. Like watching it, and it's fun to see. But yeah, just nothing crazy. It's more demo stuff. This was, I can't remember what I was talking about for this one. Oh, atmosphere. Yeah, so this is about atmosphere. So this is, again, haystack rock on the beach there, but from a good distance away. And there's so much spray and surf, and then it cools down because it's catching all that water vapors, catching the canopy cloudy gray light. So then it gets kind of cooler at the bottom too. And then you get all the people, and you get all the birds, and all this life and energy and all that stuff. But the idea was, for the demo, was more on the atmosphere side and really trying to capture that haze, which I think I did. Later that day, I joked that this is the third shift. You have your morning shift, your afternoon shift, and then your third shift. So this is third shift. We started at 7:30 after dinner. Like, some of us went back to the beach to paint, and I mean, this is where the magic happens. Like, haystack. This is like parts of, like, this part is like the tiny bit of haystack next to it. So it's like, this is the big giant rock. So just cropping and then making a little scene of all the warm afternoon light catching this rock, and the people and in and out of reflections and all that stuff. But you can see the temperature shift between here and here. Like, what did I have? Bird fight. Yeah, all the birds, they were like hawks or something, and they were going crazy, and it was just like the movie The Birds. It was nuts. See, I can't remember what I ate for breakfast or people's names. I feel bad about it, but I can remember like every part of this moment because of the painting. It'll jog all that stuff once I start remembering. Anyway, you can see like the temperature shifts here. When the light really starts to dip into the red shift, and it kind of ambers everything, which is really, really cool. This is Lake Isabel. So it's pretty high alpine. Well, it's a glacier here. It's one of my favorite spots, actually. I'm trying to go this winter. It's a bit of a haul, so I gotta kind of like mentally prepare for it. But it's really cool. Super windy. Yeah. Mountains are tricky, like alpine mountains like this, because usually they're rolling in and out of clouds pretty fast. And so you're kind of like snapshotting the look and then trying to maintain that or wait until it kind of resembles that once again. So like this peak being in shadow was really cool, but it kept rolling out of it. So I'd have to kind of like, I'm going to work on this for a while, and then, it's back in shadow, and then go back and kind of attack that. This has been a big inspiration for a chunk of paintings that I'm working on now. But that's like a big part of this kind of stuff. It's like you could have a year's worth of big scaling up paintings from one outing, and one good sketch can inspire like a whole series of stuff, I've found. So it doesn't take much, even though, there were years where I would go multiple times a week for plein air. I think for me, if I go too often, I start to want to just check the box and not, I'm not really in it. And so there's this perfect balance between too much and just going through the motions, and then just enough or too little, and then you have to relearn how to do it all the time. Like just enough to where everything is magic every time you go out. That's what I found, having been both extremes. This is this fall here in Colorado. So again, check out my website if you're interested in coming to Colorado and painting places like this. Really long fall this year, so it was super hot for a long time, and then fall lasted like 6 weeks almost. It was crazy. But again, like the atmosphere, shapes, I was trying not to overdo it. I did record this one, so I think I have a reel of it somewhere. But yeah, more of a finished painting, although it's like, still in a sketchbook. This is we went to Vancouver, just for fun, and super cool. Like just seeing the seaplanes and all this stuff. A lot of it's just painting what you don't get to paint a lot of. This is Vancouver also. Or this isn't. This is. So different kinds of fall. Like they have those maple trees that we don't have a lot of here. So you get those pops of red plus the fog, which we don't get here either, which I love. It's so cool. Really cool vibe. I mean, I don't do a lot of like pedestrians and crowds and city type stuff. Just, it's not my thing. I did for a long time, cities, but it's not something I'm painting in the studio much, and so it's not sort of information or ammo that I need. So that's not something I do a lot, but they kind of framed the whole scene, and they sat there for a while, so that was worth it. This is a park here in Colorado, where you can go see aspens. Aspens are the things that don't last long, so I have to like time it every year, and then I'm usually in the mountains. They turn differently than down here, so if you live in somewhere similar, visit use a website like All Trails or Google Maps and look at the photos and then sort by the recent, and then watch people post photos, and then you can see when they change and then get out like right then. It's a nice trick. It also works for snow. If you're looking for snow, use All Trails, look at the photos, sort by recent on certain trails, and then you can see when the snow is freshly fallen, and then you can get out. Make use of your time. Here's the last one. So this was New Year's Eve last week. It was freezing, and I'd been waiting for a window because it was forecasted to snow, but then it got delayed, and then it did snow, but it was like super gnarly, so I had to wait for it to warm up, but it was not warm, so it was like I don't know, up there it was like 12 degrees or something insane, which is like ridiculous to try to paint in, but it's nice to be out there and take photos, and I did manage to capture this. What you're seeing on here is like the mess of, this was so frozen that when it got back into the car, everything melted, and then when I closed the sketchbook, it sort of bled out. So I sat there in the car and fixed it up, while the memory was fresh. I'm not a purist or whatever. Plein air from the car is still plein air. No need to kill yourself. So yeah, but I got a bunch of cool photos from that trip that I'm working on now. So that's it. Yeah, I got to get another one because I don't have one yet. But I hope that was interesting. If you have questions, let me know. Shoot me a comment on Instagram. But also, if you're interested in the materials that I use, there's a link down below. I've got it all. I've got a page on my website that's got all that stuff if you're curious. But thanks for watching. See ya.